Starship Troopers. It's been pissing me off. It's been offline for about a month or so because I haven't been able to figure out what the hell's going on with it. I knew it was something stupid, but I couldn't find the stupid. I've lifted the playfield up. I've looked at all kinds of different problems, trying to figure out what it is. And at the end of the day, I thought it might have been a board problem. So what was it doing? It would boot up fine. It would look just like this. You'd fire it up. Everything looks perfectly fine. It'd make little announcements every now and then. Seems okay. You hit the start button. No solenoid works. It wouldn't kick a ball out. No background sound. Nothing would score. Start. There's no sound. And it doesn't do anything. It just sits there. And then eventually it will say it'll do the pull the plunger thing, but nothing is active. Flippers don't work. Da-da-da.
Come on, you wait! Pull back!
And it should be playing a little doodad right now, right? And everything. So, I don't know. Weird, huh? So after kind of dicking around, I checked all the voltages. That was my first thought. Whenever I have something weird like this, I always test voltages because it could be that maybe your MPU isn't getting the right voltage. It's just a little bit under, and it does weird stuff because you're not feeding it what it's supposed to have. So that was my first thought. Solenoids didn't seem to be working. So all right, there's 20 volts. There's two solenoids. There's a 20 volt and a 50 volt. Things like the flippers are your 50 volts. Things like your slingshots and stuff like that. And the vertical up kicks, I think, are all 20 volts. Don't quote me, but it's something like that. I checked that power. That power is fine. On the board, on the power board, there's actually lights for all the voltages, and all of those are lit. I got my 50 volt and the 20. Where's the 20? That's the 20. All of these are fine. They tested fine. I checked the fuse. If you pull the fuse for the 50 volt, it will go out. When I open the door, it does notice that the high power is disabled. And this light goes, the 50 volt goes out. 20 volt is still, the 50 goes out though. I did check the fuses anyway, thinking, those all seem to be fine. All of the fuses for the flippers, for everything that has a fuse, in the back box and under the playfield, those all tested fine. Okay, so it's not that. The only thing I could think of, because I didn't have another, this is my only Sega game in here of this era. I have a Sega over there, but it's like from the 70s. I don't have another one here that I could like swap some boards around just to test. So I made the decision, okay, there's actually Rotten Dog made a board for these. I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to buy a Rotten Dog board and everything that I need so I can pull the MPU out and swap it. Because that's kind of where I was leaning. I couldn't think of anything else. So I did that. Today I finally got the board. I plugged it in. Guess what? Exact same thing. So I'm digging around in there a bit more, trying to think, okay, well, at least we know it's not the MPU. Could it be possibly that I'm not getting the right power? So I checked that. That's all fine again too. So I'm totally at a loss. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to call the guy that I bought the board from, because he actually sent me a video with the board running in a test bed and everything seemed fine. And he works on boards, he knows all this, so maybe I can bounce some ideas off him. Sometimes when you sort of like what they call whiteboarding, where you throw a bunch of ideas at the wall and see what sticks, sometimes when you do that with someone else, you can come up with the solution, right? And his name is Sean, and he owns a company called Pinball Wizard, and I think they're in Utah. Don't quote me on that. I will put the URL for his website on the screen right here. So I've talked to Sean before on some other stuff, and I thought, okay, well, he works on boards, he knows a lot of this stuff, so maybe I'm going to call him up. Maybe he's happy to, like, we can throw some ideas against the wall and see what sticks. So I tell him what's going on, and he's like, like, he's stumped too. Like, he doesn't know. So I'm on the phone with him. We're testing a couple of things, and he's throwing out a few things like, okay, well, maybe it's the interlock. There's a little switch that when you open the coin door, it disables your 20 volt and your 50 volt. So we thought, well, maybe it's that. That all seemed okay. As I'm talking to him, we're checking all this stuff. We're throwing a lot of ideas out. I lift the playfield up, and I had already hit game start, and it was sitting there at 0-0, ball 1, no noise, no nothing. I lift the playfield up, and the game starts. My flippers start working. Like, okay, this is weird. So that kind of leads me to believe, okay, maybe we've got something going on. There's a bunch of connectors from the playfield that go down into the cabinet. They disconnect just in case you want to pull the playfield out. So everything disconnects from the playfield. You can yank the whole thing out. So that's the first thing. That's like, okay, now I'm on to something. Now I have a positive. Now I just have to find out where the negative is, right? So I thank Sean for his time. I hang up. I say, if I figure it out, I'll let you know. I check all of those connectors. All of those connectors are perfect. They seem fine. They were all connected. They were all seated. I didn't continuity test everything, but it seemed okay. I figured if I have to continuity test, I'll do that later. But for now, I'm just going to unplug them and plug them back in. Because that fixes a lot of problems on pinball machines sometimes. I do a continuity test on my lockout switch for the coin door. Both the 20 volt switch and the 50 volt switch are perfectly fine. So it's not that. I can consistently start a game. It does nothing. I lift the playfield up. A game starts. My flippers work. Ball eject works. All the 50 volt works, but the 20 volt isn't working. So that's weird. And I find that out, actually, I just stumbled on it. So there was a ball that was sitting in for the vertical upkick. That's a 20 volt solenoid to fire it out of there. I could trigger that, but the solenoid wouldn't fire. It's like, okay, so we're, at least for that, we're getting somewhere. I'm digging around a little bit, and I find on one of the pop bumpers, there's two leads that go to the pop bumper solenoid for the matrix, and one of those leads is just barely hanging on. I don't know if it was just a little piece of plastic or something that was holding it in place. Physically, it looked fine, but I was down to the point where I'm like wiggling every diode and tugging every wire, right? So I get to the point, I tug the wire, and the thing pops right off. I'm like, okay, that's weird. At least we can, maybe that's why we're not getting 20 volts. I connect that up, I solder that back on, and the game works perfectly fine. I have never run into something like this before, where if you have, I mean, usually what happens is the thing just doesn't, like, that, the particular solenoids don't work. But in this particular case, the music wouldn't play, the game wouldn't start, the 50 volt wouldn't work. Like, what a weird thing to have happen. So, I thought I would make a video on that because I've never run into anything like this before. And talking to Sean, who works on this stuff all the time, he's never heard of it either. So, if you've got one of these generations, or if you're running into a problem that's similar to this on something around this era, yeah, it doesn't hurt to check every damn wire. Anyway, at the end of the day, we can start a game. Does its thing, kicks in the ball, I can shoot the ball, flippers work. It drains because I suck at pinball when I'm not even looking at it. Seems to be working now. Anyway, that's all I have. Thanks for watching.